For 10,000 years, the fallen have wandered, hunted, and shunned. Yet many of them still wear their armor like knights, clinging to the only identity they have left. In this project, I'm building 5 of these exiles as my own take on Chaos Chosen. My name is Tansy, let's get to bashing. I'm using a variety of parts for this kit bash. Primarily, I'm starting with the Black Templar Sword Brethren kit. These models have a very knightly armor pattern. They're wearing robes, they've got swords and chains, almost perfect for Fallen. The only thing they're missing are hooded heads. Fortunately, the Dark Angels upgrade sprue and the Inner Circle Companions kit come with a ton of extra hooded heads that I'm going to be using for this, as well as my future Fallen Angels projects. For the rest of the bits, I am going to be dipping into the different parts of my bits box for Dark Angels and maybe a bit of the Chaos as well. And to get started, let's just go ahead and clip all of these Sword Brethren off of their sprues and arrange little piles that I can start to work from. I've learned my lesson on gluing models together before cleaning up some of the parts, and for these models, I do need to clean up all of the Black Templar iconography that's on there. So I'm gonna start with some of the greaves on the legs. There are these swords wrapped in ribbon icons. I'm gonna shave those down with my knife now and try to clean them up a little bit. If they're a little bit rough, that is okay. I think that the Fallen tend to have scavenged gear, so some of those rough surfaces or textures aren't necessarily unbelievable. When doing Space Marine infantry conversions or kit bashes, I pretty much always just glue the legs and the torso together. I find that the newer Space Marine kits, there isn't a lot of flexibility in these areas. They do tend to be pretty monoposed, leaving you to really focus on which arms you're going to use, which head you're going to use, and then of course all of the decorations you pick for the model. So I'm going to glue all of these up just to that point, get the legs and the torsos in place so that I can start the part selection that I'm going to need to do in order to turn them into Fallen Angels. I mentioned before the robes are such a key part in turning these into Fallen Angels. I am going to have to do a bit of cleanup as I found that some of the chained areas and there's little tiny decorations or ornaments that look like they're Black Templar. So I'm going to just slowly clean those up and shave them off now. If I don't, once things are glued in, it's going to be really hard to reach those areas. So with these all glued together, I can start to pick the parts I'm going to need. Now, I do have an addiction to hooded head bits. If there are kits that have hooded heads, I'm buying them. All of the Eldar stuff from the Age of Sigmar or even the Old World kits, anything that has a hooded head, it's part of my bits box. Between the Inner Circle Companion and the Dark Angels upgrade sprue, there are so many extra heads. The only reason I even want to learn how to do green stuff sculpting is just so that I can put hoods on existing heads or helmets that I have. So maybe that's the journey that I can take in a future video. Now I can start to tack these on, and throughout the process of putting these together, I will be trying different heads. There's just so many options. It's really the best time to do a project like this. Now, one thing I need to be really mindful of is the way that the cloaks can wrap around the sides and attach to the shoulder pads. Normally in a kit bash for Space Marines, you could just slap on any shoulder pad you want. Here, I have to be a little bit more mindful and make sure that what I pick is still gonna fit with that cloak piece over top. I didn't find any Dark Angels shoulder pads that really fit the aesthetic here. If they did have the Dark Angels icon on there, I found the trim wasn't really ornate enough for the type of armor that these guys are wearing. So what I ended up doing was just taking the Black Templar shoulder pads that come with the Sword Brethren and just shaving the icons off of there. For the backpacks, I am going to be using the same backpack on every Marine. I didn't want to use any of the more modern looking Space Marine backpacks, specifically like the ones that come in this Black Templar Sword Brethren kit. And I think it's really important to choose wisely here, because if I pick something from my Chaos Space Marine bits, it's possible that they're gonna look just too warp tainted and evil. And that's not really what I'm going for. I'm looking for more of this like forlorn, like lost knight aesthetic. So to get that, I've decided to go into what my much older Chaos Space Marine bits. I've got some from, many editions ago where they didn't have as many extreme like spikes or skulls. There was just a little bit of trim, but I had enough of these to fit on there. Now with all the common elements in place, I can start to customize each individual model. To figure out the weapons I need, I first need to decide which data sheet I'm going to be using these as. And I've already mentioned before that I'm going to be making Chaos Chosen. Now, a 5-man unit of Chosen with all of the best gear that they can take has a champion. Generally, this guy will have a power fist and a plasma pistol. one guy will have twin accursed weapon. An accursed weapon is just basically a catch-all for any sort of power weapon, with the exception of a few like a power fist and maybe a few other things. I'm gonna have two more guys with accursed weapons. They're gonna have combi weapons. So these are gonna be guns that have both a bolt gun as well as some other type of gun on there. And then the final guy, he's just kind of like a regular warrior, nothing too special. He's got that accursed weapon and he's got just a regular bolter in tow. I do want to use quite a few of the options that come in the Sword Brethren kit. This is such a great kit, it just keeps on giving. I think the paired claw option is fantastic, so that's definitely going to make it onto one of these models. For the just basic warrior guy who's got the accursed weapon and the bolter, I'm going to use this two-handed grip pose that comes with the Sword Brethren kit as well. I don't really have to show the bolter, maybe it's under his cloak or something, but I think this particular pose is great, and he doesn't have any special war gear, so I think this is going to be the best option for him. There is an option to have a combi weapon from this kit, and I really like it. This is actually one of the parts that I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do my best to incorporate some of the arms that already are in this kit. So I wanted to use this combi weapon. All of these models come with these chains wrapped around their wrists, which I think is really cool. And I think it adds to that very dark theme, that Lost Night theme. So definitely keeping those. For the last few models, I'm gonna have to dip into my bits box to get a couple of special parts. The champion has a power fist. I've got this one from the old Deathwing Knights kit. Fortunately, I did stock up on a few bits from here before the kit was retired. And to match that power fist, I've also got one of the Deathwing Knight shoulder pads. Now it looks a little oversized, and again, I like that maybe they scavenged it off of an actual Terminator and just found a way to like rig it onto his arm. The bolt pistol arm for this particular model, it's a tough one to swap out completely because the cape on this model actually attaches to the arm itself, whereas on the other ones, it doesn't attach to anything or it attaches to the shoulder pad. So I needed to keep this, but I'm gonna have to swap out the hand to have a plasma pistol instead. Fortunately, this was a really easy swap. I was able to just cut the bit of hand that was still on there, and I've got a ton of plasma pistols that are just being held by a hand, no arm attached, so I could just really easily glue that on, no pins or anything required, and it's good to go. Now I need one more combi weapon, and fortunately I found one from my Leviathan edition starter box. The Stern Guard models in there, the push fit ones, they've got a great combi weapon that one of them is holding. So I'm gonna keep that. The rest of the Stern Guard models, I actually kept those as well for Fallen and Deathwatch projects, so you'll probably see those at some point, but he's not gonna miss this arm, so I'm definitely gonna use it. I will have to shave off a few of the icons on the side of the gun, and in order to make sure that the arm fits well onto the model, I'm just gonna shave down this ridge that's in the inner portion of the arm itself where the shoulder is. That way it'll fit on nicely. Now, as I'm gluing all of these things in place, I have to be really mindful of what order I do this. As I mentioned, the capes are very important in how they attach. And in some cases, I first need to glue the cape on, the back of it, then the arm and the shoulder pad, and then this front attaching piece of the cloak. So just making sure that I do that properly and I don't accidentally glue a shoulder on before I'm supposed to do something else. I then added some tilt shields onto the shoulders. This really helped when maybe the cloak wasn't sitting as well as it was initially intended to. The reason this happened is in some cases, obviously I used different arms, but also from cutting down those Black Templar icons from the shoulders, those were actually quite large, the icons themselves. So by trimming them off, I was left with a gap for where that cloak attached. So the tilt shields kind of helped hide a bit of that for me. All right, and now we can move on to the bases. So for this, I'm using a 2-part epoxy sculpt like I have in my previous videos. I'm gonna mix the 2 parts together, and I'm gonna take some time spreading this out evenly all over all 5 of the bases. I'm leaving a bit of thickness there so that I can take my resin basing bits and just press them in to get a nice snug fit. I'm using an assortment of basing pieces from Epic Basing. They've got excellent resin parts to use on bases. Specifically, I'm using the Demon Stone as well as the Chaos Crystals for this project. Along with these, I'll be grabbing some skulls from the Citadel Battlefield Trophies kit, the one that came out recently. And I'm really aiming to get a few pieces of these basing parts on each model. So maybe 3 to 4 pieces each is what I'm aiming for. I need to be mindful of where the models are going to be standing as I'm arranging these parts. Now, normally the Sword Brethren come on 40mm bases. It's quite large. The Chaos Chosen, unfortunately, are on 32mm bases, so I'm losing quite a bit of base area, and the way the models stand, they do still fit, but they were intended to have more room around them. So as I'm placing these bits down, I really have to make sure that the models can still stand on the bases afterwards. And so I'm just pushing these pieces really deep into the putty. I don't want the raised edges of the resin bits to really stand out. It looks very unnatural when it does that. With the skulls, I'm not even cutting them. Sometimes I'll cut the backs off so that they can sit flush. With the putty, I can push them right in and still get them at natural looking angles. I am occasionally going to put the model back on the base to avoid collisions. In cases where the model will ultimately just be standing on putty at the end of the day, I'm pushing them in a little deeper so I've got these foot marks that I can be mindful of. And then later, when I actually glue them onto the base, I'll know exactly where they're meant to go. To ease the transition of these resin pieces a little bit better into the base, I'm using a clay sculpting tool dipped in a little bit of water, and I'm just running that over all of the edges, all of the areas that may look rough for now. But ultimately, I'm gonna clean up most of the rough areas using a texture paste over top. So I've got this bottle of Mordant Earth from Citadel. It's kind of old now. I can tell it's gonna start drying up soon. So I just wanna get this out of the way and use it. I'm gonna be taking a pretty thick synthetic brush, and I'm just gonna be covering over all of the areas that appear to be putty. I can be a little bit messy here. If I get some of this texture paste on some of the basing elements, it's fine. Ultimately, that cracked texture, once it's all dry, should look really nice, and it should help blend those bits of demon stone together with, everything else that's happening around the model. So we can give these bases some time to dry, but I won't be gluing the model down just yet. I do want to paint it first. Now, I have gone ahead and painted these models, and I'm about to show them to you, but this time I'm going to be sharing my painting process for all of my Fallen models in a separate video several weeks from now. Before I share that video though, I do have one more Fallen project that I'm going to be sharing with you very soon. To make sure you don't miss any of these upcoming videos, please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you wouldn't mind, give this video a like while you're at it. Now let's have a look at the finished models. I love the Fallen aesthetic. The hoods and robes mixed with the dark armor plating is a perfect combination. While the bases may have turned out to be the best part of these models, I'm hoping that I've done justice to these displaced space knights. Thanks for joining me for another Kitbash. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Bye.